We are now entering the paper sample room. Ah! Oh my God, I'm in paper geek heaven here. Oh my God, look at all these. Oh, swatch books.
Swatch
Okay,
books.
I don't want to get too excited and off topic here because I can spend an hour just looking at every single one of these paper samples. Look at all of them.
There's a lot.
All right, so tell us what, as we're walking down the aisle here,
Yes.
tell us what a spec rep does.
A spec rep works with the graphic design community. So designers, print production managers, at the beginning,
that paper.
There's a lot of paper. At the beginning of a project to kind of flush out, all right, what are you thinking about doing and what's the best sheet for the project that you want to produce? I'd say in an ideal world, you start working with your spec rep as soon as you can.
So let's start with, how do you find a spec rep?
Okay. Well, you should be able to find a spec rep. You could go the old-fashioned route and look at the yellow pages if they're still in there, but you could log in online and just do a quick search of paper merchants or paper distributors in your city. There's usually about 5 to 6 merchants within a major market area, and any printer that you work with would tell you if you ask them, they should tell you these are the merchants in the market, because that's who they're buying the paper from.
Okay. So now what does a spec rep do?
So a spec rep is working with the graphic designer or the print production manager to try to find the best sheet for the job, one that's going to not only produce great results, also fit the budget, and really exceed the expectations of making that project pop.
Now, does the spec rep work with the printer?
Absolutely. In the best case scenario, yes. Going to be honest, it doesn't happen all the time, but I can only speak from my experience.
Right.
When it works, and it works well, it's when I'm working in conjunction with a print sales rep, and together we're coming up with a solution for the designer or the end user.
Now, what happens if I contact you and you've been sending me samples and you're asking me all my paper questions, and then I find out that you're not the merchant that my printer works with? What happens then?
And that's a pretty common situation. You know, everybody has their favorites that they like to buy from. So a printer you're working with, I may not be their merchant of choice. But what I would say to you, in order for me to there's a real cost associated with the services of, doing the samples.
I mean, just
and
shipping
the dummies.
alone.
Absolutely. Right. It can add up. And I would say to you that by all means, have your merchant quote the people he normally works with, but also ask him to please quote the paper merchant that you're working with. 9 times out of 10, especially if it's a bigger job or something that's a little more specialized, I've gone to bat with our suppliers, the paper mills, negotiated better pricing up front, and in turn will pass that along so that you shouldn't be penalized because you want to work with me, the merchant, as opposed to allowing the printer to buy from who they always buy from.
Right.
Should never be...
but the printer's also buying from a merchant, correct?
Yes, they are buying from the merchant.
So it's just because you've started working on the project already and you have an inside knowledge of it, you're willing to sort of go back to the mill and say, come on, hook me up here.
In some cases, yeah. I mean, when we're talking truckloads of paper, it's definitely more than list price. So
right.
you want to make sure, yeah, are we getting, there's a budget involved, and paper's going to be a huge part of that
right.
print budget, and you don't want it to be cost prohibitive. The last thing I want as a spec rep is to go in and show you something, and you sell your client on it.
Right.
Only to have it totally blow the budget, but the client can't ever get their head off of that.
Correct.
I've let everybody down in that case. So,
well, that's happened to me a million times.
And it's a shame. It
not
shouldn't be that way.
But because I can't get the paper for less money. But had I known that I could deal with a merchant rep instead of just going through my printer, then, or have the, actually, the better way of saying is, have them work together.
The best way is
to make
work
the solution. Because nobody's trying to cut anybody out of the process.
It's not even, 9 times out of 10, it's not even about the price. More importantly, it's about availability. I mean, I'm sure you've probably heard from a printer before, oh, I can't get that, that's not available.
Yes, I've heard that.
And I'm going to show you in a minute how much paper we actually have on our floor in one location.
Right.
And we've got 13 locations,
right.
Throughout the area. But absolutely, the mills right now, paper should not be more than 2 days away. Now, I'm not saying they may not need to pay additional shipping, perhaps, if
right.
it's not a stock item, but those are all the things you want to flesh out at the beginning of the job. What's the quantity of the job? If you know it's in general, if it's 2,500 or less, I'm going to try to stick to a paper that's in stock on my floor. And especially if it's a direct mail piece or an envelope's involved, I'd always say, let's start with the envelopes and work backwards.
Right.
Because 9 times out of 10, that's where you're going to get hung up.
Right.
So it's not only price, but it's availability.
Right. So, as a spec rep too, do you distribute swatch books and samples, and what else do you do?
Yes, we do swatch books, samples, mock-ups. So say you're working on a job and it's a identity system. You want to see letterhead, envelopes, pocket folder, note cards, all of those things we mock up here. We do, perfect binding of dummies for annual reports,
Really?
catalogs. Oh yeah, the perfect binder is right over there. It's got a little glue stuck on it. You can easily identify it. As well as print samples. So the newest print promotions from the mill, as well as real jobs, which I love the mill print promotions. They are beautiful, and I'm going to show you some in a minute. But, they tend to be with not realistic budgets in mind. So I think it's always good to show a real job. This is somebody with a real life budget that used a really cool paper, and you can do it too.
I've called upon my merchant guy many times to do a comp and on the actual stock, and that's the advantage of it.
Absolutely.
It's not like you don't get it back from something that somebody has on their floor just to show you what the fold looks like.
Right.
Sometimes you actually need to have it approved on the actual stock to use that actual stock when it's something a little more expensive.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Let's move on to the next thing.
Okay.